Hi, everyone. So I'm doing my first live here. It's been quite a busy year in terms of employees and leadership, and how to pivot and adjust companies to, with the ever-changing rules based on your state, your county, and your country. So it's definitely been a wild ride for leadership and for employees. So the main issues that I'm seeing right now and that people are contacting me about are going back to work. Like, should we go back to the office? Should we do a hybrid model? And then what do I do if my employees are refusing to go back to work? And what do I do if they just want to work remote? So I think we need to go a little bit deeper with this topic because we have to figure out what was going on before, right? So this pandemic and remote work has brought a lot of things up to the surface that were maybe underneath. So I had several clients that were telling me that before the pandemic, before the move to remote work, they were considering quitting because it was a toxic workplace. And I work a lot with toxic workplace survivors, people trying to get out of the toxic workplace because no one deserves to be abused at work or anywhere, but focusing on work here. And you want to be able to get to work, to feel productive, to give back to the community, depending on your sector and your field. But being abused at work is horrible. And I've been there. I've been through situations I never would have imagined and seen things that were just really horrendous. And that's why I started this company, because there was such a need for better leadership training and also to help and support people that were getting out of toxic workplaces, or were being gaslit and didn't realize what was being done to them. Like, they were almost buying into it, like they were believing that they were that it was their fault. So, and I did a video on toxic leadership, so I'll link it. I'll link it afterwards, after the stream. So, so basically, now there's a lot of companies saying, we asked employees, do you want to go back to work? And there was a recent survey that I believe it said around 30 refused to come back at all. Like, they want to do just remote work. And I believe it was more than half. I have to double check that, and I'll post the stats after the video. So I believe it was around maybe 60 or higher that wanted some type of hybrid model or remote work options. So as a leader, you have to make a couple of decisions, right? You have to be able to say, okay, what do I need for my company, right? What do I need from my employees? What does productivity look like? What does revenue look like? Um, you know, do I have space that I want my employees to come into? Do I want to revisit having space for rent? Like, can I do this fully remote? Am I saving money doing that? So there's a lot of factors here, and it also depends on your industry. I also work crisis response, so obviously that's in the field. And there are some jobs in some industries that it's going to have to be hybrid, or it's going to have to be in person. So it does, your specific company does matter. You want to look at the bigger picture and do a strategy meeting with leadership, and also get some input from employees. So that's kind of the strategy part of deciding, do I want to go back to the office model for everybody? Is it a hybrid model? Are there specific workers that can stay remote? So there's a lot to consider there. But once you make your decision, and I'll actually post a consult link. I'll do a free 30-minute consult with anybody that needs some strategy help with this, or in general with their career or their business or leadership challenges. So, once you've established, hey, this is the model that I want. How do you get employees back to work? So, once again, one of the factors is, was it a toxic workplace before, and are you taking employee feedback? If you're ignoring your employees and you're just pushing ahead, that's a recipe for disaster. Nobody wants to stay there. A lot of clients that I work with have already made plans. Like, if they're not going to be able to stay remote, they're going to leave. So being remote in some of these cases was more of a survival strategy for being in a toxic workplace. So unless the toxicity is addressed itself, you're not going to get people back to work. why would they want to come back to deal with all this toxic workplace situations in addition to their job? Right. So working remotely, they might be able to focus on their jobs, spend time with their pets and their families, and just kind of get that joy and that replenishment and get the positivity. But being forced to go back to work, you have to consider the commute, extra expenses, not being able to take care of things at home. And if you're adding a toxic workplace on top of it, you're being bullied, belittled, micromanaged, whatever else. Like I said, I have a video on toxicity and toxic leadership, um, and what happens there. So why would you do all of that? Right? It doesn't make sense. So nobody is going to agree to go back to work unless they have no choice, or there's something balancing it that they have to manage for the moment. But most of them are going to have an exit strategy. So you're going to be losing those employees. They're on borrowed time. So, and I've seen this happen quite a lot, where companies are saying, no, this is what's going to happen, right? Like flexing their power. That is a very, very bad strategy, because employees are going to say, well, this doesn't work for me. You're not listening to me, and I'm going to make other plans. So you have to be able to listen to your employees and meet them where they're at. Like, what are they looking for from the position, right? If they're not getting anything they need from this position, why would they stay? It doesn't make any sense. So as a good leader and a great leader, you're looking at what your company needs, what your plans are, and then how are you going to execute? Get buy-in from your employees to make sure this plan is a reality. You can't do this plan on your own unless you're working on your own as a solopreneur, then you can. But if you have a company and you have employees, you're going to need them to come back to work, or you're going to have to go through a new hiring process, which is a whole other tedious, difficult process of finding the right people. So if the employees that you want to keep, how do you get to the same page? So I really recommend having a discussion together, and potentially even bringing in a consultant such as myself, or anyone who does this work, because we can help keep the conversation on track and get to the core issues of what what the disagreements might be, and how do we move forward so everybody will feel good about it and be able to get to the next stage. So I really recommend that. And then the other thing is to see what incentives can there be for coming into work, right? What are some things once again, I would definitely do either a survey or some meetings to determine what do the employees want. Is there? I know actually the other day I was the company that I work with, also was jokingly talking about having like a snack room and a puppy room for employees. But that's actually a good thing to think about. What are some incentives, right? Is there, you know, is there something that can give comfort and support at work that they're not getting at home, or would just be different at work? Right. So thinking through some options of incentives, making the place more comfortable, and people wanting to join, go back and join that work community and that culture. Um, so look to see if there's any toxicity and address that. Look to see what incentives employees might need to come back, and then really address. I would really suggest even potentially one-on-one, depending on how many employees you have, to really address any specific concerns that employees are having with returning to work. So there's one other factor that I've seen come up where employees feel like they're being deceived, or like things aren't making sense, right? So if they're saying, look, we're working remotely, everything's going great, we're getting, our services are being utilized, our productivity is up, why do we need to come back to work? So they're feeling like there's a disconnect or something's missing. So that's the buy-in that I talked about earlier. What can we do to make sure employees buy in? So you have to be able to explain why you want them to come back to work, right? Is it a specific company culture or policy? Why do you have that policy? And it's not about like explaining yourself or going into extensive detail. It's more about, this is the reason, this is the vision, right? Now, are you with us in building this company vision and moving forward with us, right? Because at the end of the day, some people just might not be on board, and that's okay, right? People that are not going to be aligned with you or going against what you're trying to build is only going to disrupt the company and the culture. So they're either going to leave themselves or they might have to be helped to leave. I had an incident like that recently myself where somebody was not being, was not communicating well, was not being part of the positive culture that I developed, and was causing a lot of chaos, toxicity, and issues that kept coming up. And we want to support and give chances, but at the end of the day, we need to see that you're working on these issues, right? If you're just being there just because, or you're not able to have that insight and awareness about yourself, you're just not a fit for the role and the company culture. So some people may leave, right? It's not that everyone's going to come back. So I definitely would look at those underlying factors of buy-in. What are you trying to create? Make sure employees understand. Buy into the vision. They're on board. They're also helping you actively with this. As you're being part of your team and getting all this going. Like, you're not just pushing forward against the tide. Like, you want most of your employees to be joining you in this push. And then addressing any toxicity issues that existed before, because this is your chance to make that change. Because things are different now. Now that people are coming back, how do you want to set that intentional company culture? That's another thing that I really focused on, and I'm more than happy to assist with a consult if you are interested. So those are the main factors. And then the other thing too, and this only applies to certain industries perhaps, but the other issue that comes up a lot, and this is the last thing, would be compensation and benefit package. So, are your employees able to comfortably live on what they're being paid, and are they being paid appropriately for their expertise and experience and skill set? Because if they're not going to want to come back, right? They'd rather be home, do their job at home, but coming into the office kind of almost exacerbates it, because there could be a lot of aggravations that happen at work, and it can tip the balance of this doesn't work for me, that I'm getting paid this much, and there's all these sacrifices I have to make to work here, and then on top of that, there are all these aggravations that I didn't have to deal with at home. So keeping that in mind, right? Like, are the employees getting what they need on a fairness level, as well as obviously having a positive work environment to support them. So a couple of points there of what kind of culture do you have, what kind of incentives, what kind of compensation, and your vision moving forward after this major disruption in the world. What is your vision, and can you get buy-in? So make sure you have strategy discussion with your leadership team. Definitely bring in a consultant. It's such a great an additional resource, and getting buy-in from the rest of the staff onto your vision, so they're actually helping you move towards it, versus going, like, if you feel like you're going against the tide, you want to reevaluate that and maybe get some assistance. All right, so I'll post the video on toxic leadership down below that I did, and I will post a link if you want to schedule a consult with me on any of these topics, or even if you're an employee thinking of transitioning or wondering if you need to go back to work. I do some one-on-one executive coaching as well. So any of these topics, if you're an employer, an employee, or a company, I'm more than willing to help. This is my passion. I love helping out and making sure that people are in a productive, positive workplace, and leaders are moving forward through challenges as best as they can, while employees are feeling happy, valued, heard, and issues are addressed. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everyone's support. If you found any helpful tips in this video, share with anyone who might need this information, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much.